What's going on, y'all? KM Best here, joined by Lamby series for our traditional 8 cubes recording. And we are here to talk to you about the 8 most important topics in the metagame. We're going to start with the card coming out this week. It is the Grandmaster, 2 cost, 0 power. Wherever you play him, he moves an on reveal card to the middle location, and he ends up repeating that battle cry, that on reveal effect at the middle location. So there are a couple major places that this card is sort of theorized to go. The first is he goes in Mr. Negative type stuff. The second is he goes in something playing like a Ravona mid-range style deck. And the third is a lot of the high elo players in my Discord have been excited about putting him in the bounce deck, although I will admit I'm a little less excited than they are. A lot of the pitch for him there is like, oh, I can play, he's second Beast, he's second Falcon, and it's like, well, you have Falcon and Beast already. Do we need a third one? Is he repeating the Hood? That seems good to me. Repeating the Hood seems good to me. How much of a Bass deck are we? How difficult is it going to be to set him up? And how much are we going to be able to deal with the conflicting play styles of, I want to put all my 1-drops in the same lane for Beast, and I want one 1-drop so I can repeat it with the Grandmaster. Either way, I think he's a compelling card, but he strikes me as a card that is like, it looks stronger than it will actually play. But I am interested to get the opinion of the guy who is the bounce guy, Lamby series. What are your thoughts on this guy?
Yo, what's up, guys? Yeah, so with Grandmaster, I actually was like looking at a lot of different cards and different like ways I can like abuse the effect and interact with it. And I realized I want to talk a lot about the bounce one first for a few reasons. So, firstly, with bounce, Grandmaster is one of those cards that like the later you play it in a game, the more like it becomes a bit random, right?
Yeah.
Because like it's like you can't really say I'm not gonna play it on reviews just so I can top deck a Grandmaster and play it. Like it's a bit too restrictive. So the earlier you get to play Grandmaster, the kind of better it gets in terms of like curated like on reviews that you can choose. And that means that you really want to play like high value early game on review cards, which is like effectively 1-cost cards, which is effectively the bounce deck. So like KM mentioned, the Hood, getting like Hood into Grandmaster is like double demons without actually bouncing, which is quite efficient. Then if you look at other cards in the bounce deck, right, like Forge, just an extra buff, it's also fine on curve. Bast is an interesting one because when you Bast, the Grandmaster goes up to a 2/3, and then when you play the Grandmaster to sort of Bast again, you could have top decked a Mysterio, you could have top decked an Iron Man, you could have top decked something else. So it's just like efficient. And I think to answer the point about there being like Falcon and Beast and then the Grandmaster as an additional bouncer or whatever, sometimes, I mean, we don't have Chavez anymore. Like we don't have the 6/9 Chavez anymore. So I think any form of increased consistency in bouncing is quite relevant. And yeah, I feel like there's been like some talk about like I saw on Twitter along the lines of like what Wave, Alioth, Grandmaster, that kind of stuff. That one's a bit not gonna work very often because it's random, right? Like
Yeah.
okay, it can be less random if you play cards in the right places, but that just means that you have to play cards in very predetermined places very often, and that's not always possible in Marvel Snap, right? So I think Grandmaster in low cost, high impact on review decks in general should be quite good. There might be better ways to play this card outside of just bounce, but I think my direction I want to go forward with Grandmaster, at least for now, is low cost, high impact on reviews.
Do you think he'll end up being worth it at that? Because it's like, I find it hard to believe that deck ends up being overwhelming given the ways in which it can be dealt with things like, you know, Invisible Woman, Killmonger, or whatever, right? Like this is like I find it like it's good and you can probably attack the metagame with it, but I find it hard to believe it ever becomes like undisputed #1. You will never lose when playing this deck the way something like Loki was. It'll be like a good deck at the top of the metagame at best, which is maybe worth investing in. But I'm just sort of interested in where you see the ceiling of a deck like that.
Yeah, I feel like this kind of deck, even in the past, right, when it was just like the old bounce, without the nerfs and stuff, like it was just top of the meta because no one was actively trying to counter it, and people didn't realize that you could just do IW Killmonger until like a bit later, and then they found out, and the deck dropped in popularity a bit. But like these kind of decks will never be like Loki style dominant, right? Because Loki is a bit harder to counter. Whereas bounce, like once people realizes that there's a way to counter it, they would like if it's popular, they'll just bring in the counters again, and it's a bit worse. But I feel like the ceiling of this deck is actually relatively high because like it's like how we used to play against bounce, right? Like if you knew that they had the counters, you knew they had the wave pre-nerf Sandman, pre-nerf wave Sandman stuff, you just play in a different way. Obviously, IW Killmonger is a bit harder to deal with because
Yeah.
now, especially your one drops are even more important, right? Forge plus Nico especially, and Hood is super important. So yeah, I'm very interested to see like where this goes. I think Bounce will have a resurgence. Because of Grandmaster, I don't know if it will stay there long enough to be like an actual meta defining force, but I think it'll be up for a bit.
I do agree it'll be up for a bit, but I just like I don't know how much of that is going to be because it's good or because the card goes in it, right? Like it's like it's one of those things where it's like, okay, a card came out for a specific kind of archetype. It's going to be up for a bit, but does that stick, right? And when people are looking at making their purchasing decisions, they need to pick the cards that stick in those archetypes and not like, when Selene came out, people played a lot of bounce. It didn't make people played a lot of Annihilus. Annihilus was good, Selene wasn't, right? Things like that. And I guess that would be, are we positive it's a strict upgrade in the bounce deck? And I think that's what I'm not sure of for Grandmaster, and I think that's why I'm a little apprehensive of him, because I worry he's like the kind of card that's going to trick a lot of people into purchasing him, and then he ends up not being super relevant because he looks like he would be good. And I am hoping that that's not what happens with him.
Yeah. So the funny thing about a bounce upgrade will be actually our next topic.
Blob nerf. He's gone
Blob
now.
nerf.
They put Blob on Ozempic. He's now only like a 624 or whatever instead of like a 650. He cut out half of it. It turns out, first of all, Thanos Blob is still good. I know Torikun is grinding it up with the exact same list as before the patch. Absolutely no changes whatsoever. Second of all, Blob is now a valid Silver Samurai target, which matters if you want to target it as your opponent or if you want to try to do it with Hela. There's something to be said for that. Third of all, Blob is now a lot smaller, which means you can try to contest that lane more reasonably, and that is actually the big deal. Like, as long as Blob is in range of, in my opinion, the big 5 drops, which you'd say like Devil Dinosaur, Ronin, an Iron Man lane, as long as you can use one of those to contest a Blob lane in with some other stuff in it, the card is no longer, I would say, broken. And I think that's a really good thing for the metagame as a whole. So, Lamby, what are your thoughts on current Blob?
So there's this thing that's on like Twitter or something whereby the average blob stats right now, like in a Thanos lockjaw deck, a standard Thanos lockjaw deck, is about 50% of them is like 17 power. And in like I've played like hundreds of games since that nerf, and I can safely say it's about 17 to 20 power. Yeah, like it's around that range. So like you mentioned earlier, contesting the blob lane is very real now because no one will contest 6 power 40, 6 energy 40 power like at once.
Yeah,
no one will just try. No one will try. But now 17 to 20-ish range, people will try and it's actually doable. So, like I mentioned in the first topic, like if you play something like Bounce that requires on stats to like win a lane, like actually building up more stats to win a lane, it's actually very possible to potentially contest what Blob is right now. Sometimes you just low roll and they hit 629. That's a bit of a problem sometimes. But like 615 to 620 range is something you can really consider and like factor into your decisions on, oh, do I want to fight this potential Blob lane with about X amount of stats? If it's about 17 power Blob, I think I can. That kind of thing. Yeah, like you can make this kind of decisions now with like more certainty. In general, I think Blob, I like this change actually for a few reasons. We can talk about this more in like the Thanos.
Just go.
Like,
just go.
Okay, just go. Okay. So like in Thanos, Lockjaw specifically, right? I think it changes a lot about the deck. Like, firstly, let's get it out of the way. Thanos Lockjaw is still tier 1 in my opinion. Like, still a very strong deck. But now with the Blob, you play it a bit differently. Like, it's good and bad. Like, you feel kind of good doing the whole wave into Blob thing right now, turn 3, turn 4, because you thin your deck by like X amount of cards. You see what you thin and then you progress your game plan from there. Because you know that you actually still can like draw cards and like do different things and not just lose it all to a Shang-Chi or like you must have a Kyra, right? That kind of thing. So Blob does that, and like turn 4, 6, 17, 20 Blob is still like something that needs to be shanked, but you don't exactly lose when it gets shanked, sort of. So I actually kind of like this direction for Blob. Obviously, it doesn't solo a lane anymore, which means what you do with Blob now is if you actually intend to win a location with a Blob, you probably need like a random wave in that location, like a random Kyra, 1 or 2 stones to like
Yep.
make it more realistic that it like wins a lane with 20-ish plus power. Last time you don't have to do that, now you kind of do. So I would say it's definitely a downgrade. Like I'm not saying all these things to say that Blob is not worse. It is for sure worse in the general scheme of things, but like it's not way much worse. Like it went from tier S card to tier 1 card. So like that's still a good thing, right? Like how Miss Marvel went from tier S to tier 1. Still good. So I would personally still play Blob Thanos. I've seen around some other decks popping around that play Blob, but they don't have much success. Like I've seen like Blob Tribunal a bit here and there. I've
That's
seen
dead now.
yeah,
That's
I've
dead
seen some like I don't know, Ravona Blob stuff. Those don't really work very well. I mean, in theory, Blob on 5, Taskmaster on 6, yeah, but that still doesn't really work very well because it's sometimes you just don't get that big of a blob. Like even if you blob on turn 5, it's gonna be 15, 17 into Taskmaster. I mean, Shuri does that better with Red Skull, so you get what I'm trying to say.
I actually think Shuri Red Skull is very informative here. One of the things that we learned from that meta is that like 30 is pretty much the break point for how big you can reasonably be, right? And I think
With
this
two
is
cuts, yeah.
yeah, this is what we're still seeing. Like if you play a blob and it's like 29, it's still probably winning that lane, right?
Mm,
Even if you didn't put any other cards in there. But if you can't count on blob to be like 30 plus regularly, which you
mm-hmm,
can't, you have to play him differently. And I think
correct.
that specific, like, there are like 2 types of Marvel Snap decks. It's a gross oversimplification. There are two
Mm-hmm,
types of Marvel Snap decks. Both of them play 60 points on the board. What type number 1 puts 20 points in all 3 lanes? Type number 2 puts 30 points in 2, right? And Blob was a walking 30 points, and now he is not. And that is really, really important because that is, I think, the break point for like when a card starts to feel like, okay, this is just absolutely too big. Like the comparison I made earlier, like so the 2 comparisons I make for Blob are Devil Dinosaur and the Infinite. It's fine if a 6-cost card is bigger than Devil Dinosaur. It's fine if a 6-cost card is bigger than the Infinite. It's not fine if it's twice the size of those cards. There
mm-hmm.
is some number where it is absolutely beyond the pale, impossible to contest, and Blob was that number. I actually just think, I'm harsh on Second Dinner. I feel like a lot here, and I wanted to say this is actually just like a really smart one. You kept the card intact. You kept the card really good. You got rid of the thing that was unfair and unfun about it. This was just a really smart one.
Yeah, this was a very good nerf actually. I have nothing bad to say about this one.
Let's talk about the meta as a whole. I am fairly certain that Thanos remains tier 1. I am confident enough that one of, or more than one of, the Zabu, Miss Marvel, Shang-Chi type decks, and that includes Black Knight, that includes Loki, that includes Sarah. One or more of those decks is good. I mean, that includes Darkhawk now, which can be played thanks to the Blob nerf. And I think that there are another group of decks, and I think this is really what I wanted to talk about. We'll get into it a little bit more in the next topic, but I just wanted to introduce it here, which is, I would call them safe space decks. They are decks that show up at the beginning of each metagame, and they're not very good, but we know how to build them perfectly, so people just sort of default to playing them. And the major culprit here is Destroy, but I think Sheenot also falls into this category, where like most good players, if you're playing those decks against them, you're like the reaction from a good player is, why are you playing that? What is going on with that? I've seen a lot of confusion from good players, like, why are people playing Destroy? That's ridiculous right now. And this is the reason why. So that's like pillar 3 of the metagame. And then there's like this sort of other group where it's like just like decks like Hela and Living Tribunal that are just trying to ignore everything you're doing and just go over the top of you and be like, well, what are you trying to do right now? For the record, I think in the context of people playing decks like Destroy and Discard and Sheenot, there is actually no better deck to play than Living Tribunal. You can't lose those matchups. It's kind of impossible to lose. Like, especially like if people start playing Bounce, right? Like Living Tribunal ruins that deck. They have to tech for you or they die. And so like there is just like this very it sort of hangs over the metagame, in my opinion. Like at any point, if people stop playing enough Enchantress, that deck can come back. And if a bunch of people are playing like old favorites, a lot of those old favorites are straightforward. I'm going to put points on the board decks with very little interaction, and something like Living Tribunal or Hela can just kind of dominate, right? And I think that that is my understanding of the metagame right now, because even the Thanos decks are not playing a ton of tech. The only decks that are playing tech in real senses are like, Sarah decks, Darkhawk decks. Loki has like 1 or 2 tech cards, but probably not Enchantress, things like that. Nobody's playing Cosmo. And so that gives you like an understanding of the directions you can try to attack this metagame from, in my opinion.
Yeah, so this is interesting. When people ask me recently when I stream, they were like, "Oh, Lamby, what's the top 3 decks in the game right now?" People don't really ask for top 2. They always ask top 3. I don't know why. But like, this is one of those few metas I can't actually give you top 3. It's always top 2 because like you literally said it. Thanos Lockjaw, the Blob nerf changed something, but not much, so it's still top 1. And then it's funny because I was about to do this myself when you said like Miss Marvel Zabu decks, right? I was about to say also, yeah, Loki, Sarah Tech, Black Knight, they are all the same thing, just that with slightly different perspectives, right? It's Zabu, Iron Lad, Miss Marvel, some form of tech, stats, a Shang. Like, it's the same thing, right? Sarah Tech does it from the back by looking at what happens and then plays Sarah and then plays stats. Loki plays on board and then Loki's you and then plays your stats. But at the core of it, it's all about playing stuff in the right places. So Miss Marvel works. So you can Zabu for more stuff, then you can Shang their stuff. Like, it's the same. You just put a bunch of stats along with Zabu Miss Marvel. That's like the second deck in the top tier right now. So it's Thanos and that kind of stuff, which is effectively like, I mean, it's Loki, it's Black Knight, it's all those stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are the same thing with which very varied, like very little changes in the deck builds, but effectively does almost the same
That's
thing.
actually so sick. Lamby, can you give me a top 3? No, I can give you a top 2, but it's actually a top 4.
Yeah, it's like I can give you
three.
I can give you 1, and I can give you the second one, and then you open up the folder and there's 4 inside. So you need to unzip the folder, but they're all number 2. Yeah, I can't exactly in good faith tell you which is 3, right?
Yes.
So that's currently where we at right now.
Yeah. Let's talk about those safe space decks, because I can't figure out if they're smart or stupid. Does that make sense? Like, I don't know why people do this. I am usually happy to queue into a destroy deck or a She-Not deck because it's like, oh, I get that. I know what I need to do. I understand everything about this. And yet, when you look at like the data sites, you're like, oh, I guess it's working for somebody somewhere, right? Because like destroys like a very well performing deck on Untapped right now, and it's like, well, it must be working for somebody, because like whenever I play it, it feels like absolutely not competitive with what people are playing, and whenever I play against it, I feel very confident. So where is this actually working? I don't really understand where it happens, but I guess what it is early metagames involve a lot of people trying to brew, and you can just get a lot of value out of playing something that's like generally efficient and does an actual game plan in those early metagames, and take advantage of those people who are trying to brew. But I think the higher up on ladder you get, the better the brews are. So like when you get really high up on ladder, even the brews are going to be better than destroy. And so you end up in this situation where it makes sense lower down when people might be trying weirder and worse stuff, but at the top of ladder, I just feel like every time I play destroy, it's like, well, this is so much worse than everything my opponent is doing. It's ridiculous. I just feel like I'm 45% in every matchup, where it's like, oh, well, even when I'm doing the stuff I'm doing, my opponents are doing things that are comparably strong. And yeah, I think destroy is probably the best of these decks, which is, discard and She-Not in them. But I think She-Not's the one that has the most longevity of them all. What would you say your thoughts on these sort of decks are? And feel free to use the word cope.
Yeah, so I think like a lot of these decks are cope. So like honestly, okay, so you mentioned destroy and She-Not. Let's address those first. I do think in terms of like if you want to gradually grind your way up with like an off meta or like safe space deck, I think destroy and She-Not is fine. But like I think the ones that annoy and scare the living shit out of like the people that play the meta stuff is actually the Hela decks. Like because like personally, I'm someone that like okay, so I like there's nothing really. Anyone can play whatever they want to play. Let's just get it out there first. Anyone can play whatever they want to play. Like, but I feel like when it comes to climbing with not the top tier stuff, I would think the scariest one is to like have to go against like a Hela style deck, which is generally a bit more popular right now because those are the kind of stuff that like okay, so destroys max range. Even if you don't know the max range, it's like a now plus death plus something that's like the nuts. Then high evo's nuts is like turn 6, they pass and then they go She-Not plus Infinite plus like She-Hulk and like for floating suns. But you know this kind of stuff. With Hela, you know it's Hela. You don't know where. You don't know
Yes.
where. It's very scary because at the highest levels, you know, like every 8 cube win or lose is like huge, right? When it comes to
Yeah.
like SP gains and drops. So like there's a lot of times that you just have to stay, but sometimes you don't know how to stay because like the Hela is random as heck. So I feel like the scary stuff that I would not like to see is like keep seeing Hellas and Hellas and Hellas because you kind of know what you need to do, but at the same time you don't know if it works out for sure because Hellas random. Yeah, I think when it comes to safe base decks, personally, I'm the most scared of like Hela. But of course, when it comes to like if you really want to just like consistently grind with your not top tier decks, I would say yeah, sure, just go with your She-Not or your Destroy and I guess go from there.
I mean, Hela is like the least safe space deck. Nobody looking for a safe space plays Hela. Like Hela is an unsafe space because you even while playing Hela are subject to the same things that your opponent is, where it's like, well, I don't know where this goes.
Okay, I think I know. I would say if you are choosing to play something not completely meta, the Hela is the
Yeah,
one that like gets you the most cube equity. You know, that's
or
basically what I'm trying
or
to say.
yeah, I think that's reasonable because Hela is the one that like you put your opponents in a situation where if you don't know where your power is going, they don't know
They
where
don't
your
know as
power
well.
is
Yeah,
going, and so they feel like they can stay a lot of the time. And for
correct.
all I know, they can, right? As far as I
They
know, there's
probably can, but not
yeah,
with 100% certainty.
yes,
That's
like
the scary part.
it's like always a gamble. When you look at like I wish there was like a Hella simulator where you could plug your situation in and be
Someone can
like,
make it, man.
yeah, I just like you plug your situation and it's like, what are my actual chances here?
Odds, right?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like because like you just kind of have to guesstimate a lot of the time. You have to be like, well, if I get like two
Someone should
unlucky
make it.
rolls, I'm dead.
Someone should make it.
Someone should make it, but I feel like that would actually be a very complex piece of uh coding, honestly. But yeah, it's just one of those things like Hella has a lot more ambiguity into whether or not you're actually dead at the top end of like your game plan, right? If you're like a bounce deck that's really been putting it on them, you could actually have enough points to beat the Hella. You just don't know if you're actually going to put them in the right location.
Exactly.
All right, Thanos guy, you say Thanos is still number one. I had four different Thanos decks on my tier list. The first one was, typical nothing changed Thanos. The second one was the build that Sanutora has been playing to number one, which was the one that had Infinite and She-Hulk in it. We brought back that year-old tech. And the third one was people are playing Loki as a tech piece in Thanos now, just to beat the mirror. And the fourth one was taking that to the logical extreme with the Johnson, Storm, Silk, Loki, Thanos deck. Of those, I know your favorite already, but tell me why.
I mean, my favorite is just the standard Thanos Lockjaw, right?
Yes.
Like the good one. I guess that one just to me that's a perfect balance of like there's like some level of tech, Shang Leech plus like the usual Lockjaw high rolls and it's big. It's like the biggest you can get without putting Infinite and She-Hulk in your deck. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Because like I personally think the Infinite in the deck just to like play around your opponent leeching you is not a very good argument to play Infinite in my opinion. But
It's for
like
Blob and for
yeah, it
high
is.
rolls. Like that's
But
why.
now
That's
that
why I
now
chose
it's
it.
less important for Blob, right? Because you don't get to eat the whole deck
I think it's
anymore, so you
more
don't actually
important for
know.
Blob because
I
it gives
mean,
you a way
you
to
don't
make
get to.
Blob more unfair.
Correct. But like the things you don't know if you will eat it, like
Yeah,
right
you
now,
don't.
right? Like so it's a bit harder to guarantee that. But the thing is, the funny thing I want to mention is like She-Hulk in this deck, like I've never found a way to really use She-Hulk in this deck outside of spawning it off of Lockjaw
Yeah.
because it's so rare that you float, and normally when you float, you die. So
Well, that's actually
um
that's the use case for She-Hulk, right? Is those
yeah,
hands where you're doing nothing suddenly become
it
She-Hulk
doesn't bring
on
you.
yeah, they turn into like She-Hulk on 4 Scar on like 5 kind of games, right? Like or She-Hulk on 4 into like Dino into like Scar plus tech piece
Yeah,
kind of games. Like
but it
it's
doesn't
not
really
great,
bring you
but
back though, because like wave on 3 is probably just better to just turbo out
if you
something big
have it,
instead of just floating. Yeah.
I don't know.
So I feel like I don't really get the She-Hulk thing, yeah. But the Johnson one is very interesting. I played against it, I saw it here and there. It's like it's very tempo-ish.
Yes.
Sort of you get like random stats here and there that somehow just matter, and then like it's playing a very interestingly, I would call it fair Thanos, because it's
Mhm.
like you play a lot of like small ball cards, but sometimes that just means that you don't have to high roll to win with the deck, right? So I do see a bit of like value to that, because you got to play a bit more small ball stuff. But then again, I feel like if you're playing like Thanos Lockjaw or like Thanos in general, the high roll is like where it's at a lot of the time. So I do prefer just the standard stuff in general. One thing I think we never talked about is like the jail Thanos, the Professor X, the
I just
Alioth
don't think
stuff.
it's good. But Johnson's deck does play Alioth, and it is a Storm Thanos deck, so it's like
Hmm.
half jail Thanos right now. So it's
Yeah.
like, but like I just think like the old style of Thanos, the issue that the small ball Thanos decks have is that when they queue into the big boy Thanos decks, they just get bullied, right? Like it's like, oh, well, one of us is playing Lockjaw and big guys, and the other one of us is playing small stuff. So it's like, who's gonna actually win here? And
Actually, yeah, go.
continue. No, no, continue. I want to
Yeah.
hear you.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say that like I think actually the important part of that matchup, a lot of it's just like the early game still. Because like
Yep.
if you are doing like stones into lockjaw, I probably die. But if I'm doing stones into prof your lockjaw lane with priority, yeah, that's also something that
Yeah.
can be considered.
It's just it's a game where the late games are similar, so what matters is the early and the mid game. Which one of you
Yeah,
is high rolling harder, basically? And it's like the lockjaw deck has more opportunities to high roll harder, is how I
that's
look at
true.
that matchup. Where it's like there's just more ways for the lockjaw deck to do something stupid, and that makes it just like inherently favored in that matchup.
I want to also add one more point to like support what you actually just said. I think I knew this, but I just didn't realize. I didn't remember it. Which is Kyra actually makes a lot of these big boy Thanoses
Yep.
like a lot better. Like there's this like added blanket, right? Like in the past, like if you high roll a big boy off of Lockjaw, you can get shanked. But
Yep.
then now like like just the Kyra being on the board. It's also stats, by the way. It's a 3-4. It fits very nicely into the curve. Like you go Lockjaw on 3, then you go Stone plus Kyra on 4. It's so perfect, right? Then you just like do stuff on 5 and 6. So I think Kyra actually just makes this deck. It's one of the few reasons why I feel like the Thanos Lockjaw deck is still tier 1 is because like there's this safety blanket with the Kyra. And one more interaction which is crazy. I don't think it's intended, correct me if I'm wrong, but the
Mm.
wave scar interaction.
It's
The
not intended.
waves it's not intended,
No.
right? But so many of my games were won with intentionally setting up like wave on 5 to do scar plus 6 drop on like on turn 6, which is crazy. Like it's unintended, but like it's like in the game, so we are gonna do it anyway, right? So
Yeah, you heard it
it's
here
such a strong
first.
interaction.
Lamby's a bug abuser. It's all
I
invalid from
mean,
here.
everyone's doing it, man.
Let's talk about Alioth. Alioth was dunked out of the metagame by Blob just doing what it did but better, which is to say win a lane on turn 6, except Blob didn't care about priority. But now that Blob is significantly weaker, he is no longer a free lane and win. Alioth is actually coming back, and I am sort of just putting this topic in here so that you know if you're in a situation where you just like a PSA, this is where we like fade to like a grayscale and start playing like soft music over it. If you are in a situation where you lose to Alioth and you're playing against a deck you aren't really sure what it's doing, maybe they're like a nihilist, maybe they clogged you up a little bit and you're like, I don't know how a clogged deck wins from here. They would never play Alioth, right? I want you to know, I want you specifically to know, yes, they will. They are doing that. Like that is what is happening right now. People are playing this card again. Like there's gonna be like a few days where people are like getting got by this card again until they remember it exists. And I know because that was happening to me. And it's like I was just playing a normal clog matchup. It's like, oh well, they're playing clog. Let me just play out this final turn. No, stop it. They are playing Alioth. Understand that now. They are doing that. The days of these decks no longer having a like lockdown turn 6 is over. They are playing something stupid. And I think that that is a metagame development worth noticing because now, of course, that, Blob brain has gone, we can welcome back our other brain disease, Alioth brain.
Yeah, I just want to share something that you touched on. I just want to add on to it, which is the whole like do you think they're running a live thing? So it's very interesting because like I have this I tend to have this like sixth sense for like when someone has some things, but I never really know because I will retreat and then like. But this one is very interesting. So like when someone is like really like losing on board, right? Except somehow they still have initiative, but you know that you're gonna win. But
Yeah.
going into turn 6, you're just thinking, do they have a live? then you just like, they probably do. You retreat, right? And you realize they ended their turn so quickly already, right? It's like you just know that they already slammed the Alioth there and turn.
It's
Like they
just
just
like right.
yeah, they just like and turn. Yeah. So you're like, oh yep, they probably had it. They probably had it. That just further reaffirms to you that they actually had it. That kind of thing, you know. So yeah, Alioth has really been resurging in so many decks. Like in my personal like experience, they've been back in like the typical old school. I've seen a few of these like Ironlad, Doom, Darkhawk stuff that has a random Alioth in there. The lockdown decks with Storm have Alioth in there. Clock runs Alioth again. Like I saw Alioth in Loki recently.
Yeah.
Like main deck, like people are doing Alioth again. Like just cause like it's very similar, right? Like since we are running like Loki in the direction of like initiative. Like you play stats, Miss Marvel, Gladiator, and then like what goes well with initiative, Alioth. So like I would say it's actually a natural like transition right now. Like if people are trying to get initiative, it makes a lot of sense to just play an Alioth. Just cause if you happen to have initiative, sometimes the Alioth just wins a game. So yeah, it's back. Alioth is back. And I think I'm fine with Alioth being back. I think it's only not fine if you don't realize that it's coming back. So
Yes.
in your games in the future, or maybe after you see this video, it's probably gonna still be relevant. But like if you're thinking on turn 6, why your opponent is still like not retreating now, which people do on ladder a lot, maybe they just really are holding on to that Alioth.
So this actually does bring up an interesting point about turn sixes generally right now, and that is that there is so much going on them, and the swings between one turn six option and the other are drastic. And I think that the major thing here is when you are playing turn six, there are like, it used to be, it's just like, all right, well, do I lose to Blob? And that sucked, don't get me wrong. But now it's like, okay, Blob, Alioth, those are the sixes you're thinking about, but also Magneto, Doctor Doom, totally in range for most decks that Blob and Alioth are in range for. Then you go down to like other cards along that line. So you have, all right, is there a Taskmaster thing that they could be doing? Some big guy that ends the game. And then you have just what I would describe as scams, rug pulls. What happens if they like Legion this Nexus? What happens if they Legion the Nexus away? What about Quake? What about Snowguard? Like there's just like a bunch of different things that make turn sixes dynamic right now. And frankly, I think that's good because it means that you're like, all right, I'm going to cover X, Y, and Z. You leave, A, B, and C uncovered. I think that's actually like a fun way to play as long as you can like reasonably get it to something other than a 50-50, if that makes sense. I like playing in those turn six metas where it's like, all right, I will cover myself from 80% of things, and if they have the 20, that's fine. I'll live with it. That's how I like playing those. I think that it's much better to do that than it is to just be like, all right, well, I win if they play Alioth left and I lose if they play Alioth right. So I did want to say, like, for a surprise T6 meta, I find this shockingly palatable, basically.
Yeah, it's shockingly palatable and it's also very interesting. I want to highlight the Quake one first because I feel like one of the reasons why I'm winning so much with Quake and like people are winning a lot with Quake, like the people that are winning with Quake are like just like saying Quake's the best card ever. Like it's just because we didn't get a chance to popularize Quake in Thanos. Because if Quake was in the most popular deck ever, right, like people will start actively playing around Quake more. Like how Quake wins for me on turn 6 is so lame these days because like I can be doing things like playing 3 cards on the left when the Nexus is in the middle, and no one thinks of Quake. Like I play 3 cards on the left and leave the Nexus empty, and they just still don't think of Quake. Like people just don't actively remember Quake right now, and I would just do it and expect people to not remember it because no one really does.
Yep.
So Quake is like in this range of like very good because people really still don't actively play around it yet. And another one I would say is okay, so I've been seeing a lot of Enchantress like popping up in decks that I didn't expect to see Enchantress. Like, if you play Loki, sometimes you expect Shang, but not as much Enchantress. Like, I've seen people play like Enchantress over Shang. I've seen Enchantress in high Evo decks as well.
Oh yeah,
which is very interesting.
no,
Yeah, I haven't
that
seen that
one's way
much.
more common actually.
True.
Because
Recently, actually.
yeah, no, like that one's like no, that one I think has been a thing like where it's like high Evo decks like back when Luke Cage was the issue.
Yeah, they cut the
Would run
Cosmo now, right? I think.
yeah,
For
but like
yeah.
for a tech piece, but like because like it used to be back when Luke Cage was an issue, Enchantress was the tech piece of choice.
True.
Now I think it's actually because of the like Living Tribunal stuff. I think it's like holdover from when Living Tribunal was really good, and it was like, all right, well, I totally died at this, and it's everywhere, and so we're making Enchantress our tech piece of choice in the deck, right? And
Yeah,
I like it. I don't think it's bad, honestly. Like I think it's
I think it's
fine.
good.
Yeah.
Also not just that. It's like just because like you can just do something like maybe float turn 5 and just go Enchantress or
Yes.
Miss Marvel play She-Hulk. It's crazy, right? It's like -10 if you're Enchantress or She-Hulk on like turn 6, and then you play another 10 from your hand. Like it's like 4/5 plus 6/10 from your
Yeah.
hand, and then you make them -10 power. It's quite a lot of stuff. So I didn't realize this is so impactful like until I saw it in action a few times. So yeah, surprise turn 6ers. I love it. I actually love it right now. The Legion one I don't see it as much as I think maybe you do.
That's
But
because
mainly
I
these two that I
play
want to highlight.
Legion now.
Ah,
Like I'm
I
seeing a
see.
lot more Legion turn 6 scams because I am the person executing the Legion turn 6 scams. Like
Right. Yeah, I haven't seen
I
it that much
yeah,
actually.
yeah. No, I play Legion in my Loki because
Mm,
my backup Loki plan is like a pretty mediocre mid-range game. And so it's like if I'm gonna play a pretty mediocre mid-range game, I want free wins in there. And so it's like Legion
yeah,
and
it makes sense.
Snowguard and just like as many free wins as I can get. And then the rest of the time I'm, doing Loki, right? And so like that,
Mm,
like it's more like a confession than it is like I
true.
see this a lot. I see it a lot from my perspective. I'm doing a lot
Yeah.
of it. Like I have had plenty of those games in recent days. All right, let's talk about Twitch drops starting on the 23rd. Lamby and myself will be streaming a whole lot thanks to the
A
Twitch
lot.
drops that will be available. You can catch me on twitch.tv/kmbestms. You catch him on twitch.tv/Lamby series. Wait, is it Lamby series
TV.
TV? Is TV? I thought
Yeah.
TV was your YouTube.
Nah, YouTube was the gaming. Let me series gaming. But
Oh
yeah,
my
let me
god,
series
you have too
TV on
many things at
Twitch.
the end of your name, dude. It's killing me. Yeah, Lamby Series TV. I definitely didn't mess that up. I'm not editing it out either.
You don't
Um,
have to.
I'm not. I'm doing it. Just quit asking. All right. And we will both be streaming a significant amount. I think I'm gonna front load a lot of it for Tuesday, Wednesday, and potentially Thursday, because I'll be traveling that weekend. I'll be trying to figure out how to make sure I can get my streams in during that time period. I'll be visiting friends and family. And I am hopeful that I will just get like some big long days on the first few days. I hope you guys stick around that with me because it's going to be an absolute blast to stream for a while because I've been wanting to like play a lot of Marvel Snap recently, and I'm excited that they're giving me an excuse to like, all right, I'm just going to play 8 hours of Marvel Snap today. What up? And so
Yeah.
that's gonna be super sick.
Yeah.
I honestly cannot wait.
Yeah, Twitch drop season has always been great for streamers. Like I really like the fact that they bring it back every month as well. For me, it's also about quite similar. I'm gonna be like going super hard during this Twitch drops period because I'm also gonna be like disappearing for a bit in February. So like this period is like super important for me to like get my streams in, and yeah, hopefully you guys like the drops. I mean, I think it's random variants this time, right? For the
I believe it's a premium mystery variant. No
1.2K, yeah,
pixels this time.
yeah,
I
yeah,
think. But
nice.
yeah, I mean, hey, I no, it's not a guaranteed 1.2 by the way. It's just PMV, so it's like 800. It's just no
Ah,
pixel.
right, right,
Yeah,
right.
it's no pixel.
Okay.
All right, y'all. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. As always, I've been Cam Best. He's been Lamby Series. I pointed the right direction. Take us out.
With that, if you like what you just saw, like, comment, subscribe, and follow KM Best on his channel. And the next video will be on my channel. So
Yes.
see you guys
For the first time in
really,
like 2
really,
weeks, he's back. We're gonna get
really,
GameCubes on
really
his
soon.
channel.
See you guys really, really soon. Yes, I'm back. I'll be back for a while. Bye bye, guys.